you tēnei hui, the last session of our hearings on the LTP annual plan local water done well process. So I would like to welcome our first submitter for the day, Duncan McLean. Oh my Duncan, nice to see you. You have 5 minutes, and if you want to leave any time for questions, you can as part of that.
Ago, we did a Newtown clean-up. It's our 4th clean-up, community action group, and I made this little video a week later, and what it does is it showcases the state that Newtown is in at the moment, which is particularly bad. I've been in business for 23 years there. We've got our local Newtown carrots. If you could turn the sound up, that'd be great. So, as you can see, pigeon poo, rubbish, everywhere. This is 1 week after a clean-up. We've got a lot of homeless folks. The suburb is pretty rough at the moment. It's a lot of drugs. It's making it challenging to do business because customers come and I think they're a little bit intimidated by people asking them for money at the money machine. So this bench here, we're about to come up to, that's the wall on cars. This is just covered in pigeon poo, and it just stays like that. I've requested street cleans multiple times, and I even do drop a pin where the pigeon poo is, but nothing seems to happen. So this is me just walking around with my phone on a Sunday. Are we able to turn the volume up?
Maximum, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as you can see, it's just a bit rough. I haven't seen any council upgrade to Newtown since I've been there, really. I think there's been some planter boxes put in, and that's it. So, if you can see that on the video, it's just gross. I think Newtown, possibly Kilburnie, but I think Newtown more is having similar problems to the inner city with at-risk and homeless folks. But I don't think we're getting the support that's needed to keep it a bit safer for everybody. So this is church opposite New World. It's where everyone does drugs and drinks. Security camera operating there, but I'm asking the church to put in some sensor lights. This car park's particularly bad as well. So you can just see the quality of the pavement there. There's bricks up. This is another great hangout for drugs, and you can't because those guys hang out there. It's not safe. So it's a local resident of the street. Just around the corner, this is the old TAB, which is not occupied now.
We do have some questions. Would you like to take them while the video's playing?
Sure.
Otherwise, we'll run out of
this
time.
particular spot here.
Sure.
We pulled out 8 bags of rubbish, 12 loaves of bread, hundreds and hundreds of drug bags, human feces, and that was all clean a week before this. As we do a quick close-up here of Mr. Hankey, the human feces, right there behind the bus stop. I've been in touch with the guy who owns the car park, but $700 was too much for him to spend on sensor lights, so he was wanting the community to pay for it. But yeah, feel free to ask questions now.
Yeah, we've only got a minute. So, Councillor Young, you have one? Okay, Councillor Abdurrahman.
Thank you, Duncan. And first, who organized that cleanup and why so much neglect from the council, you think so?
I beg your pardon? Why so much what?
Neglect from the council when it comes to addressing the issue in Newtown.
No, I've been working with the council, the bid manager, and they helped us set up the cleanups. It's not enough. You know, we're working hard behind the scenes on safety, security. We've got an eyes-on thing happening. We've got things happening, and we're working hard behind the scenes to help improve the suburb. But it's just a bit gross, and there's just so many homeless people. So it's affecting everybody's business.
Councillor Pennant?
Have there been any violent incidences from people spending time on the street?
There was one woman who was self-harming on the street. She was homeless for 6 months. We've been in touch with the community constable, and she took her to the hospital, and she didn't reach the threshold to be sectioned. So she lived on the street. She's now homed, but it's not so much, there's bits of violence, but it's more the threat. So here's a classic example of someone who sits by the money machine. I was getting money out the other day, and I had him on one side and another guy coming from the other side. Now, I'm a guy, that's fine. I'm okay with it because I've lived in the neighbourhood and I'm practising de-escalation with these folks. But if that was a lovely young woman, I think she'd be really, really intimidated. And as you can see, it's just gross on the streets. This is 1 week after a clean-up.
Sorry, we're out of time now, but thank you, Duncan. We appreciate you coming in and sharing that with us today. I'd now like to welcome our next submitter, Sue Shone. Oh my, Sue. You have 5 minutes, including time for questions if you'd like to leave it. Mute at the moment. You're still on mute, Sue. Yep, you're still on mute. You need to unmute yourself if you can.
Right. Oh, kia ora, everybody.
There you are.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I want to thank Sophie, who has organised this. She's been so helpful, and I appreciate the help that she's given. And I must say, I thought that was terrific, that last presentation. I feel as though it's going to be a bit of a letdown now with me in terms of anything visual. But I really, my topic is footpaths. And I came a cropper on a footpath a couple of weeks ago, so I'm particularly sore about it. But however, I think you're familiar with the plan, all of you. So the references on pages 10 and 27 and 42 about, I was pleased to see the 995 kilometres of footpaths and so on, and references in your plan to urban form, development and transport, city streets and so on, and bike network. But really, there are three main points that I want to make. And as you're aware, I didn't send a PowerPoint or anything written because I really just wanted to emphasise these 3 points. The first one is clarity about footpaths, because sometimes I think there's no such thing as a footpath. There are some shared spaces, but footpaths can be very precarious places in Wellington. So clarity about who's using them and when, and that is linked to the second point, which is about signage. It's really helpful, for instance, on roads around Wellington where they say, downhill traffic, please give way to uphill traffic, although that's breached a lot, but there's no clarity about it. So it means that it would be helpful, and I think not that expensive to have signage to say this is that pedestrians have priority, and to stop the cyclists and particularly the e-scooters are making it such a speed track. For instance, if you were to stand outside Unity Books, which is where I get a bus, it is chaos at times, and there are young children there and people with prams and people with disabilities. And I know, you've got this reference to the importance of accessibility. I think that's on page 68. Well, it certainly isn't. And anybody who's got impaired vision, for instance, and with a walking stick, they just take their lives in their hands anywhere along Willis Street. I work in Bond Street. I'm not at work at the moment, but I find that I'm on tenterhooks because of the speed of the e-scooters and the fact that bikes will just weave in and out of the people waiting for the bus. It's absolute Rafferty rules. I can't believe it. And I was a cyclist in my childhood many years ago. I was brought up in Gisborne, and everybody cycled, but you did not cycle on the footpath. It was absolutely clear. You'd be stopped by a traffic cop. And more of that later. So clarity, signage, and the last one, enforcement. There's absolutely no enforcement of people who are creating havoc for pedestrians. And I just despair of it because of the fact that it used to be that people would signal with a bell. That's very old-fashioned. But you've got no idea that someone's behind you until they whoosh past you and almost bowl you over, and especially the e-scooters. So I really like some concentration on those. They're not going to be high cost things. Absolute clarity around it, the signage and the enforcement. And just a little story in case you've got any questions. As you will know, ACC paid $15 million last year for e-scooter accidents. It's a huge amount, and I just think it's such a shame that our footpaths, I love walking along the waterfront and so on. I'm quite terrified of e-scooters and bikes as one gets older and less stable on one's feet. It is really worrying when you just don't know what's coming at you. And they seem to feel that as a pedestrian, you don't have the right of way. And just one little story. In 1920, I found this in the Gisborne Times, which was a predecessor of the Gisborne Herald. My grandfather, Thomas Shone, who was a pretty penniless musician, really, who taught piano and played in bands, was fined £3, 7 shillings for riding his bike on the footpath in Mangapapa in Gisborne. Now, it's phenomenal. It would be at least 3 weeks' pay. There seem to be no fines at all, and I know that it's not just really has to be a joined-up situation. But please make our footpaths in Wellington safer. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm sorry, Sue, we are out of time, but thank you for sharing your thoughts today, and I hope your injury mends well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd now like to welcome our next submitter, John Wild. Hi, John. You have 5 minutes, including time for questions, if you'd like to leave it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm John Wild. I am a bred and born Wellingtonian. I've lived here all my life, and I love this city. I'm a Kōrau boy. I have 2 submissions. The first is on the long-term plan amendment, and it is to urge the council to vote not for its preferred option 1, but for option 3, but also to reduce CapEx to the necessary minimum. So in short, I urge a modified version of option 3. Why? Well, there are 2 certainties. The first is that our city will be hit by a destructive natural disaster. It's not an if, it's a when, and it's likely to be an earthquake. The second certainty is that insurance will become, if indeed it remains available to the city, it will become more expensive and less attractive in its terms. So it follows that for the city to begin to self-insure, to build up what I think the document calls a resilience fund, so that it can rebuild the city following a disaster, is not an option, but in my submission, an imperative. I do have some experience in self-insurance. on a commercial scale, but probably not the time to outline that unless councillors want to hear about it. Currently, 100% of the city's investment portfolio is in assets located here in the city. That's set out on page 13 of the consultation document. And that portfolio simply must be reinvested in assets located away from the city, and that as rapidly as is prudently achievable. So that means the city's minority shareholding in Wellington Airport and its ground leases, perhaps not all of them, but the 9 identified at least, need to be sold. I don't want to sell them, but it's an imperative. So to conclude on my first point, option 3 in my submission is the only prudent option. My second point is already touched on. Rate increases, and you will have heard this from many submitters, of 21%, at least for me this year, 10.9% forecast for next year, are simply unsustainable. So to minimise rate increases, I do urge the council to cut all discretionary capital expenditure, that is expenditure that is simply not necessary but desirable. Now, I don't want to go into the pros and cons of cycle lanes and Thornton Quay and the Golden Mile. The point I make is that these things, be they desirable or not, are simply unaffordable for our city at the moment. So those are the 2 points I wish to make. Any questions?
I've got one for you, John. The difficulty we have is when you come to capital cuts is we have to get a majority vote for them. And so we get people coming in and saying that we should cut the thing they don't want. And then there's another group of the community who want us to cut something else that they don't want. What do you think? How do you think we negotiate those differences as a governing body with multiple opinions?
Well, I think there's a stark difference between what is necessary. So, for example, I came down Birdwood Street in Kōrau this morning. You're spending a lot of money on that cliff above the road. That's necessary. But the cycle lane, such as it was that went up Birdwood Street, is not necessary. I mean, I'm a cyclist. I rode from in the Sounds to Sounds a year ago, 1,500 kilometres. Nice to have a cycle lane, but not necessary. So there's that sharp difference. And you don't have to be an atomic scientist to know what is necessary, has got to be done.
I think there's still multiple views around what's necessary. But anyway, thank you so much. We're out of time. I really want to thank you for a very clear submission and coming in to see us. Thank you. So we now have, should we just go straight to Wade's? Okay, Wadestown Voices. Jeremy? No, mine. Now you have a whopping 20 minutes. And if you've got someone with you, you can come and take a seat, whatever you prefer.
Sure, thanks. Okay. I'll just hand out those overheads.
Thank you.
Right, is it up on the screen? Oh, cool, thanks very much.
Thank you.
I'll just check it works. Yeah. Audio isn't great, is it? Remote control. I'll just signal.
If you just let us know, we can click. Just go next slide.
Yeah,
and we'll do it for you. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. I'm presenting on two things: the long-term plan and the local water done well. Okay. My name's Jeremy Verity. I'm an electrical engineer with the BE from Canterbury, and the group I'm representing is Wadestown Voices. Okay, next, please. Okay, Raise Some Voices is a residents group. Our aim is to help residents understand what the council's doing and then help them feedback that information to council. Okay, next, please. Okay, I just had a look at your 2024 long-term plan and just took some numbers out of it. Okay, the two key ones are the CapEx of 4.9 billion, which mainly goes to the water assets as far as I understand, and the 11.6 billion of the OPEX. Next, please. That's just some more numbers to support that. Next, please. Thanks. Okay, so I've just done a summary and I've added up the numbers and I can see a discrepancy. It'd be nice if the council could check this for me. I'm getting a difference for the CapEx of 4.9 and 6.4 when I add your numbers up from those two slides. So I'm going to use 4.9, but it'd be nice if we could confirm maybe I've got it wrong, but it'd be good to know. Next, please. Okay, again, that's your numbers again. Next, please. And I've just added those up from that. From those two pie charts and just to check them. So we've got an agreement there with the pie charts of 11.6 for OPEX and 4.9 for CapEx. Next, please. Okay, so I've just done a summary there of your revenue and I agree with the, again, with the OPEX number in yellow. Next, please. Okay, so what I've attempted to do here is look at, I can't hardly read that, but look at the rates for the 24 and the 25 long-term plan numbers that you've given me. So I'll just grab, can I grab one of those handouts? Okay, next please. So that's also the analysis for the adjustment that you did for the long-term plan 25 in that table. Next please. And I've used some calculations. This actually came from Andrea Compton from the IT people. And I've just basically looked at the cost of the rates in 10 years' time for a $1 million house in that one. And next, please. And for a $2 million house. And so I've used her calculations in some of my in those tables previously. Next, please. Okay, so what I've done here is I've just looked at what the long-term plan 2024 would have been for the rates, and that's over the next 10 years. So that orange graph there at the bottom, that's what it would have been with your 2024 long-term plan. The thing I'm interested in, and it's not very clearly stated, is actually when we borrow our 4.9 billion for our CapEx, are we trying to pay back the principal or not? I suggest that we aren't based on your figures that I've got there for the orange line, what the estimated rates are. It looks to me as though you're not trying to pay back the principal. What I've done there is taken that 2024 long-term plan number in orange and then said, okay, let's look at it if we're trying to pay back that principal, either half of it at the blue line or all of it with the purple line, and that would tell you what the actual rates would be if we were to pay back the principal, which I believe, well, as a small business owner, and also for the ratepayers of Wellington, it would be good that we aim to pay back the principal, not just borrow the money and pay interest only. Okay, next one, please. So what that graph is there is just looking at what our rates would be for $1 million and a $2 million house based on your latest 2025 long-term plan numbers, where you have a Wellington City Council component for the rates and a water component for the rates. And you can see there that, you know, rates are going to be somewhere around 12 grand for $1 million house and somewhere around 24 grand a year for a $2 million house in the 2024 year, 34 year, sorry, in 10 years' time. Next one, please. Now, I've also looked at if we weren't to pay back the 4.9 billion that we're borrowing, how much would each household have as a debt over that period of time? So if you look at, you can see slowly the debt's increasing to somewhere around $50,000, if my eyesight's correct, in 10 years' time. So each household would actually have an extra debt burden within the council of $50,000 per household. And that's something I think that the ratepayers might like to know what their risk is, because risk is quite important. I'll talk about that later. Next slide. Okay, this is the other thing the council's been talking about is the debt to income ratio. What I see is going on here, and I'm welcome to be corrected later on, that the council was trying to shift the debt out of the council to make your debt to income ratio look like it's below the 280%, which is what the LGFA, I think, is specified for your borrowing. But okay, you're just going to shift it to the water entity, but in total the debt is still going to be 4.9 billion. So if we use that 4.9 billion number, that means your debt to income ratio is now 610%, which is well beyond what the LGFA are saying is, you know, a sensible or responsible level for borrowing. And the other thing you're doing there is, I mean, you're saying that the rates are going down, but I mean, and all of us can see the rates are doubling when you add the water component into it. So, it just seems a little bit sort of silly semantics to me. Next slide, please. So I think Wellington needs a 0% rate rise, and this is achievable, and there are other groups that have done this. I know, I'm not going to lecture but you know who the people are who are proposing 0% rates rise. And the reason why is the cost of living is becoming unaffordable. Many residents are considering leaving Wellington. Residents are worried that they cannot afford to keep their house. I know people who are having sleepless nights, and really cutting back on important things like how much food they buy per week because they can't afford to pay the rates. People's mental health is being affected, and we need to reverse this downward spiral that the city is in. Next slide, please. Okay, the other thing is the risk I was talking about. Ratepayers' houses are security against this loan that the council is borrowing. So, it's extremely important that ratepayers understand that the decisions that you guys make as councillors actually affects their livelihood. That's an important point I'd like to make. So that's in the LGFA. So if the council borrows money from the LGFA, the terms are that I understand is that the council can put rates up to any level they have to recover the debt for the loan. Okay, next one, please. I believe council should be practising austerity measures, not the residents and ratepayers. Next one, please. Okay, how to achieve zero rates? A lot of this has been done by other people. I'll quickly go through it, but like with both OPEX and CAPEX, we can do lots of efficiency improvements. Just simple things like costing jobs properly, like how much does it really cost to replace a street sign? Is it hundreds of dollars, not thousands, as Ray suggested with some of his examples? My experience of the water care people is that they turn up and they do things they can't get it right. I end up doing it myself, and they've wasted, I don't know what, thousands of dollars or more turning up to my place for something that they can't do. We need to borrow less money. Next one. Look at our projects, obviously the Golden Mile, underutilised cycleways. We've got to look seriously at those, whether we should be doing them. Some are okay, some aren't. Value cars is a necessary part of living in the 21st century. Avoid the discrimination. It's not 4 wheels bad, 2 wheels good. Avoid unnecessary parking management plans, e.g. ways down connections. Next one. The focus should be on basic infrastructure, strip out unnecessary projects, avoid open contracts with contractors, hire professional independent quantity surveyors to specify and review quotations and do proper auditing. Now there's a guy that's been in the media a bit, mainly the alternative media. It's called Rapid QS. There's a guy called David Baker. There's a podcast on councils on Reality Jet Radio. I know that he's the enemy, but if you really want to see how jobs are costed and how to manage your contractors, this guy is really good. Next one, please. So that's just a little bit about this guy. If anybody's interested in reading it, it's David Baker, and that's a bit of a blurb on what he does. Next one, please. And okay, that's the podcast that's with Rodney Hyde, and that's a picture of him there on Reality Jet Radio for some of you who'd like to look it up. Next one, please. Okay, local water done well options. No need for a complicated, expensive restructure. Manage the current organisation properly. We don't need water meters with proper management of assets. So my key points for that. Next one, please. Also, Wellington water infrastructure never should be sold. It always should remain as an asset of the Wellington ratepayers. I'm quite concerned that if it's set up as a separate entity, it might be sold off and then the ratepayers are held to ransom with whatever levels a corporate entity wants to charge us. And we've got no control over that anymore because it's not part of us. Next one, please. Okay, my summary is Wellington is unaffordable and I think on a death spiral as a city. The proposed and current rates are not affordable. We need a zero rates rise, borrow less money, don't bankrupt our city, employ auditors to achieve a zero rates rise, focus on core infrastructure. We can't afford to have nice to haves. Next one, please. Just some questions for the council. Can we confirm our CapEx borrowing? You don't have to answer them right now, but some of them are quite complicated, but I'll pose these questions, and as an Lagoima or OIA request, it would be nice if I could have some answers that would help me to understand it and also explain to some of the ratepayers. So the first one is, can we confirm our CapEx borrowing is 4.9 or 6.4 billion? Are we paying back the principal of the $4.9 billion loan? What is our actual total debt to income ratio? I believe it, and realistically it's 610%. Do you really believe ratepayers are okay with reduced council rates but combined WCC and water rates actually making their rates double? Next one. And so I guess my final comment is, what is the vision for Wellington City that the council has? Is it a place with high rates where people sell up and leave, house prices plummet and even lower than they are now? I mean, I'm speculating, but will people end up selling out to developers? They'll build infill housing and then Wellington will become a city of renters and infill housing. I mean, is that the vision? I don't know, but that's one of the things I wonder about. So that's it, I think, from me. Now, I've also got another person from Wadestown as well who'd like to make a 3-minute submission as well.
Great. Before we do that, I want to respond to your question about the 4.9.
Yep.
So to be clear, just because it's capital expenditure, it doesn't mean it's borrowing. And the difference between the two figures that you have come to is because you haven't included any other sources of revenue for the capital expenditure. For example, the Waka Kotahi funding. So it is 4.9, and it's because you're not including other sources of revenue for CapEx.
Oh, yeah, great. If you can give those sources to me. I've looked at your long-term plan documents. I can't see where they come from.
Okay, great. We can do that. As you say, you've made a Lagoima request. So welcome to the second person.
Hang on, I just finished that. I said those numbers are in there. I can see your OPEX spending. I can't understand where the CapEx is coming from.
There's funding for external sources to cover CapEx, is what I'm saying.
You send that to me, and if I need to correct it, I'll correct it.
We can do that, absolutely.
As I understand it, I can't see it.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Caroline Doust, living in Wadestown. I just want to say that my focus will be on user charging, but it's waterworks in general. To me, none of the proposed options are likely to solve existing issues with water infrastructure maintenance. The problems are deteriorating water infrastructure and loss of control of remedial activities, resulting in cost blowouts. Given past experience, actions that increase independence of water entities are less likely to meet the population's needs. User charging will increase the independence of water entities and likely further distance their actions from consumer needs. Looking around the world, such entities often seek privatisation for profit maximisation, so that fits with what my compatriot just said. So I think that we are in danger of moving into a privatisation area if we give the water entity its own income stream. Therefore, we should not implement usage-based charging. It is also unnecessary as Wellington is not growing, so demand is constrained. Progressive leak repairs will provide more water than is needed, given that needs are currently met, even though not much more than half of water is reaching consumers. Avoiding the capital costs of the meters allows those funds to be redirected to infrastructure repair. User charging will hurt those least able to pay. So I think we should maintain the existing water entity, but we should endeavour to renegotiate voting rights based on population rather than council, because we currently don't have sufficient say in that entity. Otherwise, but irrespective of whether we stay with that entity or we partially separate out, which I think we should do if we can't renegotiate the voting rights, we should insource regular maintenance in order to enable the council to regain control of much of the smaller work that needs to be done. And contracting should only be used for work where it's uneconomical to provide the infrastructure, the heavy equipment and so on to actually carry out that work. At the moment, pretty well everything seems to be contracted, and that results in extremely high costs for the council and ultimately the ratepayers. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Caroline. We do have some questions for Jeremy, the first one being from Councillor Free.
Hi, Jeremy, and look, I can hear the concern in your voice, and you know, we respect that and understand it. But I just wanted to say, the cost of living, how much is also contributed by, you know, for example, the mortgage rates having gone up, which would add about $15,000 a year to a $500,000 mortgage, and also, you know, tax rates and things like that. I think the council's rates get unfairly focused on sometimes because some of those other things are kind of taken for granted a bit more than the rates are. I don't know if you've got a comment on that.
I agree. We've been hit from all sides, totally, yeah. But
we've got to do what we can.
everybody has to have some austerity in their life at the moment. And I think just as much as we do as individuals and business owners, the council does too. And that's why I'm giving you a tool, even though he's the enemy maybe, David Baker, but he is very good. And I think the council could learn a lot from him to help us save money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, thanks very much for your submission. My question was in relation to the water one where you had suggested none of the above and just Wellington Water properly. I was wondering if you had considered that option wasn't legally open to us under the water reforms by the government?
No, so you're saying that you can't run Wellington Water as a council entity?
Yeah. Well, I guess not in its current model under the new water reform. So that's why there was the option 3 there. So I guess I'm just trying to understand, is your kind of argument around option 3 or...
Well, it's more around, I think, with option 1, keeping things as they are.
Okay, I think I understand. Yeah, that's all good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Pannett.
Thank you for your detailed submission. I'm just wondering if you accept that climate change is going to cause problems for us that will cost money, so trying to mitigate and prepare for that is a good investment of ratepayer money?
In climate change, so I don't actually see it as a great issue, to be honest, personally. But yeah, we contribute, 0.02% or something rather to the wheel's carbon dioxide emissions. So I can't see, even if we were doing something wrong, which I don't think we are, it would make no difference anyway.
Councillor Abdurrahman.
Thank you for your submission, and it's painful to hear about the residents, about the rates increase. It's obviously unaffordable. However, my question to you is, just put aside for a second about the mismanagement or perceived mismanagement from council. Do you think the funding model itself is broken, how the local government funded?
I think you mean that we're able to borrow money from the LGFA. Is that the question? Or I don't quite understand.
The only way the council can deliver infrastructure is just by getting money from residents, basically through rates. Do you think that model by itself is broken? When the city is growing, when we have a lot of infrastructure to look after, the only way to fund is rates. Do you think that funding model is broken? The central government should be stepping up in some areas?
Well, ultimately, we all pay, whether it's central government or local government. I think probably it should be done locally, and people understand what we're borrowing and how much it costs them, but also done in a way that we are minimising costs by what I talked about there. Managing the OPEX and CAPEX that we have in our council tightly with proper external audits, from quantity surveyors, so we're getting minimum cost and best value for money.
Thanks, Jeremy. We're probably out of time for another question. We appreciate you
Okay,
take
thank
the
you very
time.
much for your time, everybody.
All right, I'd like to welcome our final submitter for the day, Alison Jones. Welcome, Alison, and you have 5 minutes, including time for questions if you'd like.
Awesome. Tēnā koutou katoa. Alison Jones aho. Good morning and welcome to councillors and other interested parties. I'm here to speak about the short-term rentals on the Airbnb. I don't have a whole home. I'm just a single woman trying to survive. I work for New Zealand Post, so as you can imagine, my wage is just about the living wage after 15 years. The money that I make from my job just covers all my rates, mortgage, internet, power, everything like that. I have a home in Aro Valley. I have 2 small bedrooms that aren't really suitable for anyone who wants to live particularly long term. One of them is about 2.5 times 4 metres. The other one's about kind of a little square box. I have one boarder who I just charge a flat fee because I don't think people should pay too much to live in a small room. And when I have rates, they're about $60 a night for someone to stay on Airbnb. I think the proposed rate, commercial rate, is disproportionate to the rooms that people have for Airbnb. This is talking about people who have whole houses. As regards to some of the other submitters would have spoken about the ratios. Those hotels have obviously been built since Airbnb, quite a few new ones. Their rates would be 1,000 or 1,500 compared to an Airbnb, which would be 3,000. Now, the Airbnb people that I have, there's not many. If you're looking at kind of 60 days advertised, that doesn't equal occupancy or reasons why people may be open or booked for Airbnb. I have that spare bedroom, which I put on Airbnb from time to time, and then I block it off for friends or family to stay. And currently this week, I'm going to host a friend for nothing because she's fleeing from a sort of potentially violent situation in her Kuringa Ora housing in Hankey Street. So the money that I get from my boarder, that gives me my living costs, food, medical, blah, blah, blah. And any Airbnb money gets put aside to improve my asset, which has rapidly shrunk in value. So, yes, as we've all heard about the cost of living, blah, blah, blah. Let me see. I was very glad to be on Airbnb because beforehand I spent many years being a renter and I thought I'd never get into a home. Now that I became a landlord, vetting people. And I've made some poor choices there. And I was a bit laissez-faire, expecting people to be good. I'd be good to them. I got one particular flatmate who was having his own sort of personal life crisis. Then he got quite violent one night and sort of hit me in the head, started a fire outside the room. I had another flatmate there and luckily was able to exit and call the police. And that was the only way he was ever going to leave. And then the second poor choice I made, that person ended up ripping me off for about $4,000 in credit card fraud. So I flamed her on Facebook, as per suggestion of a workmate. Now that ignited a whole storm. She linked my phone number to sex sites. I would get invitations about, oh, you've sent me a dick pic. And I'd have to say, no, that wasn't me. And I still persisted with keeping my own cell phone number because I didn't want to lose that. Luckily, after some time, they'd all died away. And Airbnb vets people. So, like Trade Me, you can give them ratings on whether they're a good or bad person. And the visitors that I have, I promote Wellington like any other sort of Airbnb people. You open up your home to be generous with your food. I offer baking, tell them what my best picks of Wellington to go to. They spend money at the local cafes. They go to Zealandia. I mean, I've progressively improved my home from what was a typical Aro Valley house. I might look at Mount Vic, but I certainly don't get the sunshine in the angle elevation that I am. So the proposed rates, it's kind of if you're going to bring in a policy, welcome in Airbnb. Where's the economic impact of what Airbnb contributes to the local Wellington economy, as in offering flexible, cheap places for people to stay? I get a lot of solo women travellers that stay at my place, mostly from overseas. I don't have any other bookings on my Airbnb for the rest of this year. I only have about 5 dates in June. So to get clobbered with a sort of rate increase for a whole year seems to be pretty cruel. So, Kōrau, why don't we have a chat before this policy gets introduced, you know? So,
thank you, Alison. I'm sorry, we're out of time, but we appreciate you taking the time to come and share your thoughts with us today. Thank you. Now we are going to move on to the item receiving the submissions. Andrea's going to take the report as read. Are there any questions of officers before we move it? Councillor Abdurrahman.
My only question is just it would be good to get a written answer to all of us to some of the questions being raised by submitters, including the one today. So it's going to fill some of the gap, whether the information is.
There will be a submission summary. I'm not sure if that will include written answers to every single question put to us by submitters.
No, I'm not necessarily asking to every single question. Some of the questions we will have from our understanding and from the paper itself, but some of them are a bit too big to ignore.
So, Councillor, we haven't necessarily had anyone in the room picking up all of the questions that have been asked or highlighted those. So I think the best approach is for councillors, if you've heard things during submissions, you could submit those through the Q&A process, and certainly would work through that process. Our main area of focus is certainly in summarising the submissions. You will bring what you've heard in oral hearings to your consideration of the matters, but our focus at the moment is getting the papers out for your deliberations next Thursday.
Saw another hand, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, Councillor.
No, I've been asking, and I'm intending to have a meeting with Matt to discuss this further, for some independent advice on how we can, what our options actually are going forward with water. I think we've heard enough. That's raised a lot of questions in my mind. And I want to know how that's going to dovetail with the process, because we're working to a very, very tight time frame, and I'm nervous about making a final decision on the 22nd, and I wonder if we can be presented with a couple of different options. Or look,
So
I think this is an incredibly important issue.
it is absolutely an incredibly
important issue, and I'm really nervous that we're going to try and rush ahead with this without some kind of leeway to get some more information.
So this has been a significant program of work in terms of the water reform process. I think we are working back from the delivery date of the Water Services Delivery Plan, which is a statutory deadline. As we acknowledged last week in the hearings, that statutory deadline is incredibly tight, but it is a statutory deadline and we need to give effect to that. So we've been working backwards from that statutory deadline. That was one that, was set some time ago. We have been progressively making decisions right throughout this LTP amendment process and even before then. We've made decisions, or you've made decisions as elected members on which items or which matters you wanted to go out and consult on. I acknowledge that it is really hard now to start to actually make decisions, but that is the process that we're at in this time frame.
For example, I want some independent legal advice on the stormwater issue. So I know that we may not have specifically gone out to consult on whether we did our own stormwater or not, but you can, I believe, receive information that will allow you to modify something that you went out to consult on. So I really want to understand what our options actually are.
Yep. So I will take that feedback and pass that on to the team, so that's included.
And
in
when
the
I
paper
heard the advice that was given to us, I actually, my mind questioned it, and I thought, I actually want to check that advice externally. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can get that advice. However, this isn't unusual that we make a decision and we actually did reduce our options, and we had quite a lengthy debate on the stormwater issue. I'm not disputing any of that, and I think we should get some advice about what our potential options are. However, this isn't unusual.
No, but what I'm saying is we are running very tight to the wind, obviously, and that's not our, well, it did make it more complicated that we did an LTP amendment, but we are where we are. But I still think we need to take every opportunity we can to make sure we land in the best possible place. And I'm also thinking about our advice around any provisos that we can put legally into our agreement.
Yeah. It's. I think also this debate we're considering receiving the submissions, and we will have opportunities to seek that advice and get about our decisions as we go ahead. Okay. So there will continue to be some options.
I am raising this because we have had lots and lots of questions. And so I'm raising it yet again publicly, just to do so. Thank you.
Councillor Abdurrahman.
I'll just do it during debate time, it's all right.
Okay, yes, all right. Are there any questions? In that case, I will move that we receive the submissions. Councillor Panovich will second. I'd like to thank John for his assistance with chairing through this process. I would like to thank all of the submitters who took time. Some of them took a great deal of their time in their analysis, and we appreciate hearing from all members of our community as part of this process. Do you wish to speak, John? Councillor Abdurrahman?
I will just second what you said, Madam Chair, regarding to thanking the community for their quality submissions, and especially to my constituent who did a really good job, including Duncan today, who is here, and his submission for the Newtown area. I really want to see at some stage between now and when we receive the paper, where we can sit together and have some discussions to digest the submission from the community. Otherwise, it's going to be only a tick box. So a good example would be Wellington Ambulance. They have requested for a very small amount of money. They are doing a great job, and how we can support them or not support them, that should be part of a discussion before the papers come in front of us. And the Newtown residents and the Newtown business group, they have showed us a video today, and that area needs a bit of love and a bit of attention. How we can achieve that through the city safety or Panake promise previously. So we need to have those discussions. The third point, when the community come here and do their submissions, sometimes they just include everything in their written submission, sometimes not. If we are not capturing some of their points and not discussing later on, again, that would be a problem as well. And I highly recommend for us to come together and to digest those things. A good example would be today's submission. I disagree with some of the points he said, but I would love to know the difference between that 4.19 and 6 something billion, and where that is coming from, and that needs to be a bit clarified for us as well. If I missed it and the rest of you already know it, it's on me. I think we should be clear for all of us. And also, he just suggested after the local water done well, it will be 610 instead of 280. Is that true? Is that just where that number is coming from? We need a bit clarity in that area. And he's not the only one. There are other submitters on the other days who said some stuff, and I wanted clarity in that space before I make a decision. And again, thanks to all for a quality submission.
Councillor Chung?
Yes, I was particularly moved by two of the submitters this morning. The video that we saw at 9:30 to me was absolutely reprehensible. If you look at, if that's what Newtown looks like, and obviously it does because he's done the video there, we should really be ashamed of ourselves, and we should be looking at what our maintenance policies are for actually cleaning up this area. I mean, that is probably the worst suburb I've ever seen anywhere. And so we need to look at that and what we're going to do about it. The second presentation by Jeremy Verity with his analytical analysis of our finances, yes, and I understood that part of that money that he quoted being borrowed was actually from NZTA, so it wasn't included in there. But nonetheless, it was a real shake-up on how much all our policies are actually costing residents, and so we should be looking at that as well. So thank you.
Councillor Free?
Yes, look, I've just had a suggestion that I do move an amendment or put forward an amendment around the requesting of independent legal advice. It's just sometimes you have to actually do things to make it happen. So Councillor Randall's offered to second an amendment. I don't know if we need to just take a quick adjournment for me to
Okay,
put
we
this
can
up.
take an
Sorry, I don't want to cause difficulties, but at the same time I've been banging on about this for a little while now. So
Let's take a 5-minute adjournment. She's not going to put an amendment. Her concern remains, and we have endeavoured that we are going to address that outside of this meeting, and we will continue that to make sure that we have all the advice we need to make the decisions. However, this paper is to receive the submissions. Councillor Calvert, you wish to speak?
Jump off and up. Yeah, I'll set it up. Okay.
Can we please mute people online? Thank you.
I think it's really important to note that I think this
Hello.
is...
That's right.
So Randall, could you please mute yourself? Thank you. Please, Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. I'll get started again. Look, I think through this course of the submissions, and I think in my nearly 9 years on council, this is the most submissions I've seen presenting a huge amount of data. We've seen a lot of graphs, and I know we normally do see them, but there's been a wide array of that from many different submitters, a lot of them saying the same thing. We need to live in the real world, and we need to be cognizant of the situation that everyone is finding themselves in, whether they're a household, whether they're a business. And they're asking us to adjust our plans. What was relied on 3 years ago, things have changed dramatically for everyone. And they're asking us basically to get real. We've got an opportunity, people round this table, and we are constrained about what we did consult on, but we do have choices. And I think this is an opportunity for us over the next 10 days, whether it's through amendments or whether it's through another means, that we take the leadership into our own hands and we say, okay, what can we do to step forward into making sure that our rates are as affordable as possible, because we know they're not affordable. We know what we can make changes. It's probably very limited, but we've got to try. And I think we've got 10 days to be able to do something, to come together, regardless of what politics or you may be driven by, because we've heard a lot from people. And I still see us as council spending money. We know we're going to spend, we've heard that we're going to spend $500,000 just this coming year, starting in July, on working on an engagement exercise for climate adaptation in one area of the city. And yet we see basic stuff not being done. We can't clean our streets on a regular basis. Everything's been put into the central city. The suburbs are suffering. And we really need to think about where we are focusing ratepayers' money right at the moment. We can do an engagement exercise. There's tools around. We could do that for a quarter of the price, a fifth of the price. We've got to stop gold plating stuff. We've got to find workable solutions. So I hope the officers have heard a lot from the submitters, and I think, as my colleagues have said, some of the information is in addition to what they put in their submissions. We've heard it. But the leadership has got to come now down to us around this table. We've got to do something about what we've heard. We can't just leave this to be a tick box exercise and leave it to next Thursday or Friday fighting over which amendments. We've really got to come together. We've got an opportunity. If we don't take it, we can't afford to wait another 6 months until there's a change in council. Thank you.
All right, there appears to be no more debate, so I'll just have a right of reply. Oh, Councillor Randall, did you want to speak? Sorry, online.
Yes, I did want to speak.
Okay.
So I'd like to, I know that Councillor Freeze discussed raising an amendment. I would like to raise an amendment requesting officers provide independent legal advice on the options for this council on the water decision.
We just had a discussion about that, Councillor, and the call we made was that we want to arrange for that advice to be sought. However, it wasn't relevant to the motion, which is to receive the submissions. So are you comfortable with that outcome, that we will arrange and have a conversation about making sure that we have the advice, but accept that actually this motion is just to receive the submissions?
So, with all due respect, Chair, want to add this to the receipt of submissions because I think the submissions around the water throughout this means that I think it's important to note that we need to get this additional information.
Okay,
and hence my amendment.
Councillor, we will take. Have you got a seconder?
I understand that Councillor McNulty will second,
Okay,
but he can confirm
we will take an
that.
adjournment. Could you provide wording, Councillor?
Sure.
Yeah, great. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute adjournment. If you could please.
Chair, and thanks officers for supporting this as well as you. Look, I think that the water entity is the biggest decision this council is going to make, and the submitters that we've heard also recognise this, and we've had a number of submitters that were really just about the water. So it's very important that we get the best, set ourselves up for success. And two of the questions which I'm still not happy we've got sufficient advice on are these two questions around stormwater and also around whether or not we've got some flexibility in choosing which option, regional entity or go it alone, going forward. Because as we've outlined in the earlier water workshop, some of the biggest decisions will be made based on our choice, and that affects us going forward. So I think we want to make sure we don't end up with yet another Wellington Water. I think that's on top of everyone's mind. And getting some legal advice that's really about this council choosing the option would help give some assurance as we go forward on what we're really making a choice across and how permanent the choice that we make potentially next week will be. So I ask you all to support this motion, and because these issues are big issues, and we've really got to set ourselves up for success. Thank you.
Councillor McNulty, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, well, quickly. Morena, everyone. Apologies, I'm not in there today, physically unable to be. I just wanted to second this amendment. Firstly, own the poor process of this coming last minute at the fly. If I was sitting across from the table, I'd call it out. So I try and own my hypocrisies on that. But nonetheless, I think there's an important principle here when we go back to last year in the airport. Indeed, our staff had commissioned advice asking about the legality of an option that sat partially between selling half and selling all the shares, or selling none and selling half. We actually requested that as an organisation to understand the principle there, and I don't see that this is entirely dissimilar. So I think this is important information that we should have as part of any decision, and hence my willingness to second it.
Does anybody got any questions of officers of this amendment? Yep. Councillor O'Neill?
Kia ora, thank you. I just wanted to understand the implications of this, notably just around maybe what our constraints are around getting this information within the next 10 days.
So we will be able to, I'm sure, progress this. It will obviously come at a cost, particularly getting legal advice at short notice, but we'll be able to do that. I think that within what is drafted here, we've got sufficient parameters to be able to understand what the legal advice is that's being sought, so we can certainly pursue that.
Puiwi Hohaia. I just had a question about the relevance to the motion. I don't see anything in the amendment that ties it to the submissions at all. Anybody want to answer that?
Can we ask questions after the motion's been seconded? Just checking.
Yes, we can. Thank you. I'll chair the meeting. Thanks.
I was just asking. I wasn't trying to chair.
Cool. So just to provide a response to the process, it is up to the chair to determine whether they would like to rule amendment out of order, and it's their read as to whether the amendment is directly relevant to the initial motion.
Councillor Frey, you have a question? Thanks, Lottie.
Yesterday, or was it, I don't know, sometime last week, we were told that the process is that we can actually opt out of this after we've opted in, up to about a year after sometime in 2026. So I want to know whether part of that second one about the conditions that will enable the council to subsequently choose another option. How does that dovetail in potentially with our ability to exit, which was outlined for us by...
I think you're getting into the substantive of the legal advice rather than,
But I think, would, if you're feeling that this isn't related to receiving the submissions, do we need to make it clear that actually this has come about because of some of what we've heard?
I thought it's been moved and seconded now, so we could do that by leave of the meeting. Councillor Rogers?
Yeah, my question was just whether these two questions were something that had already been considered as the course of our decision making, and whether officers had any information internally that they could provide to us or have already created for some councillors.
Good morning, councillors. Thank you for that question. Yes, so back in December, the advice we provided on consultation options did include an option to keep stormwater in-house and join the regional model for a two waters model only. So that advice was made available. I'm very happy to share that again if that is required.
Councillor Abdurrahman?
Can I just quickly ask that to be verbally shared, and if they satisfy with it, if they can withdraw their amendment? If they are not happy with that, we can see from their own. Madam Chair.
Is that possible to do that now? To provide the advice verbally? I agree. I mean, honestly, my gut instinct would be to rule this out of order, and I'm being extremely indulgent. Because everybody wants advice and information. Sorry, Margot, over to you.
Yes, we can do that.
The question was, can you provide it verbally now?
Not to be fair, not off the top of my head, no. But I'm very happy. It was quite a substantive report, so I'm very happy to pull that together into a more concise format for you and circulate that via email.
Can I just check, is the mover of the motion still intent on putting the motion?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. And it's possibly a step ahead of the amendment, but I wanted to understand, kind of irregardless of advice on stormwater or choice of conditions, that we are constrained largely to what we have consulted on, and that if it was resolved to go in another direction, that might require another order, another long-term plan amendment. So I'm just wondering if...
So the main constraint that you have in front of you is the legislative timeframe for the Water Services Delivery Plan and the timeframe that it would take for us to prepare that Water Services Delivery Plan. So that's the main constraint that we're working towards here. We have been working through a process of iterative decision making in order to inform that Water Services Delivery Plan and undertake consultation. So the decision that was made in December was one not to include two waters. So that decision has already been made, and that was the basis in which we went out and consulted. So that would have been the time to have potentially this conversation. We went out and we consulted on three waters and the status quo, or retaining modified status quo, I should hasten to add, or having a water services entity in-house that did three waters. Those were our three consultation options. In terms of this, it's not bedded into the LTP amendment per se, other than removing the current assumption, because it was your preferred option, was to remove all of the all of the water expenditure and revenue and debt and assets from our long-term plan amendment. So that's what's in our long-term plan at this point in time. We are operating under a different framework for consultation, under different legislation, not the Local Government Act. So it is difficult to say what the impact would be in terms of consultation process. But again, it comes back to when we must have a water services delivery plan in place, and the decision has already been made. So in effect, you'd be revoking that decision. I guess the other thing that I would add is you have been briefed on the provisional written responses, which had a very high response rate of mid-70s. I won't be specific because that was in it was in a public excluded briefing where the favoured option was a regional model. You've also heard some oral submissions from those that submitted, which was in around 700 submissions, that have talked about stormwater and have felt that they wanted to, take that. But you also need to give regard to the submissions that have been made both orally and in written. You need to have given regard. So to take a really high percentage, you need to think about what are the implications of not pursuing with that consultation. That's another thing that you would need to think about, and that could be also the other aspect of legal advice that we could get for you to help your decision making.
Poiwi Hohaya.
Thank you. So just if I could go back to, so there was a substantive report in December, yep, and the question of whether to take stormwater out or not was covered in that. And there was an opportunity to debate that report?
Yes.
And apologies because I might have missed one or two workshops. And the decision was made in December to take it out, to leave it in?
Correct.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Chung?
I'm a little bit confused, so I'm not sure whether I'm missing something here, but in that second part here, it says that we can subsequently choose another option. Now, if we can actually do that, that means that we're going to invest a lot of money into looking at the first option.
It doesn't say that we can get another option. It is asking for legal advice on the matter of whether or not we can get another option. The advice we have had so far is that we cannot have another option. However, councillors are wanting to test that through this amendment by seeking further legal advice.
Right, okay, thanks. Right.
I think I would just note that there could be other options that are available to us, but that comes with consequences and the ability to deliver a water service delivery plan, and that the Minister has signalled that if a water service delivery plan is not submitted by the due date, then they are likely to bring in an observer to do this, commissioner, to do that work.
Are there any other questions of officers? Then we will move to debate on the amendment. Councillor Free, you were on the list.
Yes, although I sense it's probably not the mood of the meeting, I will support this because I do feel that we just haven't had independent advice that's tailored particularly around our council's options. It's been, there have been lots of things mooted, including representation, lots of things said about asset management, lots of things said about how we might receive reporting from this organisation, or how indeed it might be held accountable to us. But I've not seen enough in writing, and the advice we got the other day did not seem particularly tailored to our council and how we would respond and craft a resolution eventually that would provide us with comfort about some of these things, and that is what I'm really seeking advice around. It's probably a bit different to what's in front of us here, but
Councillor,
I'm going to support it.
I do want to note we had substantive advice provided to and commissioned by this council.
But we're in debate
as
now.
part of our decision on December.
But we are in debate now.
We are in debate, but I'm correcting you from the chair because we have. We have had
I'm only telling,
substantive.
in my debate, I'm saying how I feel about
Okay, you've
this.
made it. You've finished.
And-
Great.
And
All right.
You can say how you feel about it, but I'm saying how I feel about it.
As a point of fact, we had significant independent advice commissioned by this council as part of that process. That is a fact. I understand if people feel it's not sufficient, or they can't remember it, or it doesn't help now, but we have had it. I just want to, because I think it is important. This has been a lengthy process, which has had a lot of resource attached to it. I know that it's a very quick, because of central government. However, we have had that advice. Pauewi Hohaya.
Thank you. I'm not going to support this resolution. It's a process thing, and although I haven't attended every single workshop, it appears to me that the process has been, beyond reproach. So we've had opportunity to debate a substantive report in which stormwater was part of that debate. I mean, I have personal views about stormwater that, but the process, we've got to respect that process. So I'll be voting against this resolution.
Councillor Calvert.
Yeah, look, I just want to clarify and confirm that from my perspective, we've had a lot of advice and we've had a lot of good advice. However, we've gone out to consult and hear from people, and we've heard from them. And I think through the course of the submissions, what I have had a growing concern is around stormwater, and it's given me more information than what I was aware of, a different perspective, and so whilst I appreciate that this is changing what we consulted on, I just think this is about why we go out to consult, because we hear people's views that we haven't heard from before, and I think that applies to this budget, to our long-term plan budget as well. We have got to be bold enough to actually say, hey, we hadn't thought of that. Maybe we just need to take another look at it, and we need to, look, we've got the observer here, maybe off record, offline, we can have a talk with him, but we need to perhaps even engage with government, and we need to open those lines of communication and say, look, genuinely we want the reform, but genuinely we are concerned about the stormwater, or for me anyway, there may be other aspects, but about the stormwater aspect, because I think there's some really valid reasons being given. And so I am going to support this amendment because of that, and I think we need to find more information, but I think we need to strengthen, repair our engagement with government to just find a solution for this, because while we can't make this decision based purely on process, we can't rely on that. This is a third of the three waters. It's critical for the future decisions and future supply for people that we represent. So thank you for bringing the amendment, and I will be supporting it.
Councillor Abdiram.
Kia ora whānau. Usually I don't struggle taking sides, but this time I am, and I want to hear from the mover or in the seconder of this motion to convince me that what exactly are you trying to achieve. And the second part is, when a while ago we asked for independent advice regarding the airport motion, there was a bit of disagreement, and we want to find out a bit going by getting independent advice. However, in this regard, do you believe there is, as an outcome of this independent advice, we will be able to get stormwater separate? And if you can just address that side of the question, where is the question itself coming is my question. So are you not confident with the advice, and you perceive there will be different outcomes? And the second part is, this is really good. However, again, if you just told it on the spot today, or if you've been thinking about it for a while, and I just want to know that as well. That is, the reason for that is, if you've been thinking about it, I will be more inclined to support. However, if you just thought about it now, not digested pretty well, that will be a bit of an indication which way I will be voting. Thank you.
I'm going to speak briefly next to say that I'm unsure about how to vote for these amendments, and I probably think I should have ruled them out of order, honestly. However, I'm usually, my instinct is to kind of let things to be debated and voted. However, I want to make it very clear that people may not get the advice they want. If they think the advice is going to magically create new options or magically create a new process, you may well be disappointed. And the other point I would like to make is, I will not be voting for anything that puts us at risk of submitting our water services delivery plan. And no offence, Lindsay, love you, inviting any more government intervention into the business of this council. And this is where I think some of you want to go. I don't know, but I think it creates great risk. Councillor Rogers.
Point of order. That's incorrect information. I don't believe anybody around this table
my opinion.
wants that. And I'm giving you my view.
You've made your point of order. Councillor, it is not a valid point of order. I gave my opinion. Right, Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, I'm still somewhat undecided, but just through my questions, I did ask about whether we had already considered substantial advice on this, and I do believe that to be the case. And I did also just want to highlight that there was no one who submitted today on the particulars of stormwater, and so it is very valid that this amendment could have been presented and prepared earlier. And I think I would encourage councillors to go and read the advice that we received in December, and had you had any questions that came up from submissions, you may have found that if you emailed the team, you would have received a response.
Councillor Brown. Oh, sorry, before you start. Sorry, Councillor Calvert, I should have paused to consider your point of order as I committed that I would previously do. Apologies, I will do that next time. Councillor Brown.
I mean, obviously I'm supporting this. I mean, I don't disagree that some of the information at least is available, but I feel that over the course of this consultation and also from the briefing which we received last week from the Department of Internal Affairs and the Minter-Ellison lawyers who are employed by Porirua City Council, that a number of uncertainties and new pieces of information have emerged. I would particularly like to actually point you to what the Department of Internal Affairs chap said, where he claimed that they had been agnostic towards stormwater being included or not. So he said it was entirely our decision. And I actually do believe that there was a misunderstanding on the part of councillors when they made their decision back in December, I think it was last year, as to the three options. And as you know, at that point, I strongly advocated that we should have explicitly allowed for stormwater to have been retained in-house. So I think it's a good idea for us to actually get a clarification or a reminder today of what that would actually mean. And because I think it is a very important decision, because I genuinely believe that actually stormwater will be a very poor fit with the commercial business which we are looking to establish. The second point about the right to review our participation in a regional model, again, what we got from Porirua's lawyers on last week when we had that briefing was that there is an enormously large number of details yet to emerge about this, the regional entity. In particular, we have no idea of the value of our equity and what proportion of the equity that will actually make of the new corporate company that we are going to form. We have no idea of how much debt we're actually transferring in. We have no idea of what the financial forecasts of this entity are. We have no knowledge at all around the ring fencing of costs and benefits of this entity. We have no understanding of the shareholders' agreement and what rights we will actually have and how directors will be appointed or any of the director appointment type processes. In fact, as you all know, Porirua City Council have instigated the director recruitment and chief executive recruitment process without even us being informed. So I feel that we learned last week that we know very, very, very little about the enterprise that we are actually committing $8 billion of Wellington City's assets to. This next year, if we agree with our current LTP and annual plan, we will be having 3 water rates of $235 million. So we're transferring an enormous amount of revenue and an enormous amount of asset into this entity, and we know very, very little about how that will be run. So I think understanding our right to actually extract ourselves were we to make the mistake of voting in favour of option 1 is a very wise thing for us to do. So we understand exactly what our possibilities of future action are once the clarity emerges around these issues of the capital structure of the entity, our shareholders' rights, and also the other thing.
Wrap up, Councillor.
Sorry, last point. I also feel that the consumer charter is critically important in how this evolves, and that is also another issue that we've only really for the first time saw some sort of sign of that last week. Thank you.
Councillor Chung. The chair for. Spent a lot of time debating an amendment to whether or not we receive the submissions. Councillor Chung.
Yes, I agree.
Can for extensions.
Yes, I agree that we have received a lot of information, but I tend to think that when we receive this information, we all look at it and we study it and we try and understand exactly the logic of it and whether that actually is pertinent. And I think that when we actually do that individually ourselves, we get a eureka moment, think, yes, that makes sense to me, and this is exactly what I think that we should be doing. Now, I have to say that I haven't reached that stage yet, and so I do think that there's a lot of unanswered questions, and so I don't. And of course, I'm opposed to spending more money, but I do believe that looking for another external look at this and seeing what information is provided is actually called for, because it is such a huge investment for us. And so we need to be absolutely sure, well, as much as we can be, that we are making the right decision. So I'm going to support this. Thank you.
I would just like to quickly check with the councillors who have moved it and to seek leave of the meeting, if we can turn those bullet points into an A and a B.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you, councillor.
Yeah.
All right. Councillor O'Neill.
Kia ora anō. Just wanted to speak briefly to this amendment. I really empathise with the fact that we have had an overload of information and reform around water done well, and the significance of the decision is not lost on me. We also know that every other single council is operating on the same amount of information that we are, and we are all constrained to come to an appropriate decision within a short time frame. I think it is really unfortunate that the government bill is really vague about a lot of the issues that have been debated today. And I think that the consequences, looking ahead in terms of this amendment and the advice and maybe the outcomes that we're seeking, is that this could potentially impede the decision to move to another water services entity, therefore making it so that we are not in line with our financial strategy, and it could promote further government intervention. I really understand on Friday it was the end of a pretty grueling week. We had many 12-hour days in there, but I would just like to point out the in-person attendance of the colleagues around the table, and I can only infer this because that's what the camera picks up. But there are 18 of us that are making a decision on this, and there was at minimum 6 people present, 6 decision makers present at the beginning. We averaged about 8 decision makers over the entire workshop, and at maximum we had 9. This is just in the room. I would like to, because there has been hoorah about attendance and whatnot in the past, and I want to acknowledge the mover and the seconder were both present and that as well. But then to look at, I guess, on the other side of this amendment, if the outcome that we are seeking is to get better and stronger advice, Wellington City Council specific, on stormwater and our conditions to take leave, that Margot and the Chair have both verbally kind of confirmed to us all today that we will be receiving the advice from December and further advice in the next 10 days. So actually, on the whole, I'm going to be voting against this because I think we can get assurances without the need for specific requirements for legal advice.
Deputy Mayor Foon.
Thank you. Yes, I'm in a state, but I'm of hearing you, Councillor O'Neill, but I am just reflecting, and I think that this decision feels really important, and I really want to be clear on what we are doing. And I know that we've had a lot of work done in the past, but I think for me, I am happy to progress with the regional model, but I do just want some reflection and further understanding on stormwater, and so that is why I'm looking at supporting the amendment. Thank you.
All right, we will now move to right of reply. Councillor Randall.
Thank you all, and thank you, Councillor Matthews, for permitting this amendment. I do understand your view that we're just accepting submissions, but I think this is a result of those submissions and the concerns that were raised. And thank you also to all the councillors who have participated in this debate. Look, I want to bring everyone back from deciding on the water decision to just say this amendment is about information about our ability to make these decisions. This amendment really stems from the comments from multiple councillors, but also Sarah Free raised it, yet again, and I thought that was really timely. I want to make sure that we get information about where we are at now, having heard all these submissions. And I also want to make sure that we know what we can do with the new information raised by submitters on these two specific issues. Councillor Abdurrahman rightly raises the question: what are we trying to achieve by moving this amendment? Really, and trying to get information on what is our ability or constraints to, as a council, decide on what is a $1 billion decision. This is the biggest decision that this council will make. Yes, others have raised that we've had significant legal advice. That's true, and we've had lots of other advice. We've worked really, really hard to get to the bottom of this, but a lot of that legal advice was not for now. It was done back in December, and I have to say we've had innumerable. We've learnt so much about water since December. The growing concern that was outlined by Councillor Calvert with stormwater is, I think, a particularly important thing. Yes, we made the decision in December, and it could be that the legal advice is that decision is done. And if only we learn that, then we know that any debate around that is moot. But if we have some options around stormwater, we need to know what they are. Councillor Brown also, I particularly like your contribution outlining the large number of issues that are sort of associated with this bits of information. And in particular, the fact that the legal advice that we have been, that the information we've been based on is legal advice from the group that is bringing together the preferred option, of which is the regional entity. However, I think we now need advice that's specific to now.
Could you start to wrap up, Councillor?
And specific to the Wellington City Council. What options to decide do we really have? This is not being done under the Local Government Act, so the legality of what we can do needs to be spelt out to us. So I do ask you, because it's really about information on our ability to make decisions, and I'm really puzzled by people who would not want to get that, because we want to make sure that if we make a decision, that we do it knowing that what our freedom of action is going forward. So please support this. Thank you.
All right, we'll go to the vote. We'll do 3. I know, but we're taking it separately.
Could I have a division, please?
Yes. That is carried. 3.1. That is carried. 3.2. That is carried. All right, we will now move back to the substantive, noting that most of you already spoke. Does anybody else wish to go back to the substantive of receiving the submissions? All right, I'll forego my right of reply in the spirit of that, and we'll go to the vote. We'll just vote on the whole lot. We don't need to do it again, do we? Thank you. That is carried. We will now close the meeting with a karakia. Unuhia, 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 ki te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, e te ara takatū, koe ara e rongo, whakairia āki ki runga, kia wātia, ai rā, kua wātia.